guess I'll just leave this here. Should I hold it or should I leave it? What do you think? Should I hold it?
That's pretty loud.
Pretty loud. Okay.
You might have to click on the screen.
This screen? Okay, cool. Alright, well, thank you for being here. This is a presentation on bioregionalism that I put together for you guys, and we're recording it for Alex and Kathryn and whoever else might be interested in watching this, for the people that couldn't be here today. We also have Avery and Gabe here as my audience, so thank you for physically being present. Okay, and the reason why I wanted to create this was just to, one, for me to have more practice in presenting these concepts, and also to start a conversation about how we might enact some of this stuff in our lives. Okay, so when I say bioregionalism, I define it as a set of principles based on an awareness of our interdependence on one another and the earth. Okay, and so I'm going to go through what kind of these principles are and how to develop this awareness. So one of the principles I call we can call it the butterfly effect, and that is one action leads to consequences that affect a larger system of interconnected parts. So here are some examples. Pouring chemicals in drain pipes affect ocean life downstream. Homelessness costs society money in emergency visits, policing, and public health and safety concerns. And they've done a lot of studies on this where it's actually it costs more money to have homeless people be homeless than it is just to
Pay for the home.
give them, just to give them a home. And then we also have a policing phenomena. Stricter policing causes more restlessness and animosity against figures of authority, which often ends up escalating violence and crime down the line. And the reason why I picked a variety of different situations is I also want to showcase the idea that bioregionalism, although it's rooted in ecology and how to take care of natural environments, it also applies to any natural phenomena. And a central principle of bioregionalism is that as human beings we are natural phenomena, so we can be understood in similar ways. Okay. Another principle for bioregionalism is called space holding and natural boundaries. These are sometimes called sheds. For every social and environmental relationship, there is a map that can be drawn of the space covered via pathways of distribution and natural boundaries for when distribution reaches its natural limits. So within the watershed is the prime example of this in bioregional philosophy. So we have here's a little village inside mountain grooves. We have rain that comes from the top, and it goes on the top of all the mountains, and then that trickles into larger and larger rivers and tributaries that end up going into the ocean, which is all the way downhill. And that basically creates a watershed, or what's called a watershed, because we see how water is distributed throughout the region, and we see the natural boundaries that occur. In this case, because of gravity. Gravity kind of stimulates the extent to which the water can distribute. So that's an example of a natural watershed, or natural bioregional perspective, but we can also take the similar concept and think about urban space holding and natural boundaries. So for example, we can talk about food sheds and food security. So here's a hypothetical thing. I didn't actually do the research to determine this, but I want to. But let's suppose we take a grocery store like the Co-op, and we investigate what percentage of groceries from various different neighborhoods come from the Co-op, right? And let's suppose that we uncover this map. Aggie Square loves the co-op. Like, we have a giant arrow. It's like they get most of their food from the co-op. Let's suppose, right? West Village, less, right? It's a skinnier arrow. And Pacifico co-ops, they virtually don't even know co-op exists. Okay, so then we can ask why is this distribution? So this creates a shed phenomena because Pacifico co-ops in other neighborhoods like Pacifico co-op, they form a natural boundary. That's kind of the extent to which the co-op reaches and has significance. And we can also map the whole distribution of the effect that the co-op has in terms of providing food for various neighborhoods. So this is another example of a shed. Here's a question for you guys. Given this example, can we just hypothesize potentially why this distribution could be possible?
I would guess that some of it has to do with geographic proximity to the actual store.
Yeah.
If there's a closer store, there's gonna be a natural tendency to shop at the other one.
Perfect. Exactly. Yeah. Specific co-ops are in South Davis. West Village is in West Davis, West Village, right? Aggie Square happens to be pretty close to F Street, so that, like, geographically, that makes a lot of sense, right? So that's a good. Any other ideas of why a distribution like this could happen? Yeah, well, maybe. No? Any other ideas? Well, the co-op is kind of expensive. So some communities like Pacific co-ops, they're low-income housing. So not only are they kind of further away from the co-op, but they're also probably don't have a lot of money to go shop there. Now you could make the argument that with food stamps or things like that, you could shop at the co-op, and then that could be more of a question of, if you have food stamps, would you rather shop at a cheaper spot like grocery outlet, so you can make more, you can get more with your food stamp money or whatever, right? Anyway, so these are all questions that can be explored when you map out a shed. And what you can do, which is what a bioregional organization can do, you can take every single grocery store and create a whole food shed map for that for the whole bioregion. And that's really exciting. Okay, so bioregional sheds of all types. So we talk about water sheds, we talk about food sheds. There could be health service sheds, like what's the reach that Sutter Hospital has? What's the reach that the local Davis Community Clinic has? We have tools and equipment sheds. We have like a makerspace, for example, which has a repository of tools that can be checked out, things like that, like what's the impact on that in the community. Knowledge sheds, we have libraries, we have the internet, schools, those are forms of knowledge sheds. Skill and labor sheds, material resource sheds, so that would be like, for example, Home Depot, or like any place where you can like find construction materials or whatever, cultural inspiration and creative inspiration and cultural sheds. So for example, we could have, there's like quiz night at I don't know where it is anymore. There used to be like this quiz thing. Remember, like
the University of Beer.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's like a cultural phenomena, and like, so how does that spread out in the community? Like, I know like G Street, they've got like Funk Night. They've got like just these things that bring community together. We can map all that stuff out. Ecological diversity sheds, that goes back to just like plant life, biological, like the impact that the urban life has on the local ecosystems. Okay, so that was sheds, and that's also, we talk about natural boundaries, we talk about distributions, and we talk about how they make up what are called sheds. So the next principle I mention is what I call growing together or growing apart. So given that you have this shed phenomena, given that you have the butterfly effect, you can either be conscientious with how things grow together in mutual support of one another, Or if you're not aware of the interrelationships and you just start doing things just to do them, then you might be out of alignment with what's healthy in the shed itself, and you can start disrupting it. So basically, they'll read what I have. All forms of life are constantly interacting with one another. Interactions which produce win-win outcomes proliferate, and interactions which produce a disparity polarize and atrophy over time. So on the right we have an image of farming that isn't organic or isn't like in tune with the local bioregion, and that ends up destroying the wildlife, destroying the ecosystem, and eventually the plant life, even the farm itself, will stop producing crop. So you have to invest more and more into the farm because it's not naturally trying to become alive, right? So that's the example of this is an example of how you can grow together in like mutual correspondence for long periods of time, versus how you can start growing apart and then you'll constantly trying to be playing catch up, fixing. You spend most of your time fixing things that are constantly in disrepair, instead of like focusing on just living a healthy life. Okay, then next principle I call bioregional responsibility. Everyone is responsible for their individual well-being and also for the well-being of their bioregion. So once you have an awareness of the the butterfly effect, and once you can see the sheds, map out the sheds, and then you can also start seeing what healthy sheds look like versus what ones that are unhealthy. You can actually start taking active responsibility. So here we have, this lady. She's like, she takes care of herself well. She's probably got a profession. She knows what she's doing in life. And she's also looking after the educational systems in her community. She's like looking at what the government's doing. She's looking at the neighborhoods. She's looking at here's all the types of jobs, the nature in her bioregion, and like the agriculture. And now, of course, obviously, as one person, you can't necessarily have that big of an impact on the whole bioregion. So it does take everyone to actually like make changes or help out. Okay, so then I have another concept that I call re-indigenizing. Re-indigenizing is basically this whole process of developing bioregional awareness and shifting consciousness towards being responsible for your bioregion. So I call that shifting from settler mindset to a bioregional spirit. And so on the left side we have some aspects of settler mindset. So for example, oftentimes as a settler, you think it's me versus my environment. It's like, and then your environment is everyone else and nature. It's like, I go out there and I get what I want, right? I build trails because it's fun to go hiking in nature. Like, I do it because I like it, whatever, right? I cut down trees because I need the logs for my house. If anything gets in my way, I find ways to force them out of my way. I sponsor conservation efforts because I don't want nature to disappear entirely. And my home is my dwelling, and I protect it against all adversity. So that's settler mindset. It comes from a long tradition of just being in a foreign country, not really understanding how the country works, and feeling like it's just not an easy place to live and survive because you don't have the awareness of how that bioregion works, right? And so then you end up constantly being in survival mode of trying to protect yourself and perpetuate your own survival. So we can shift to the bioregional spirit mindset. Instead of it's me versus my environment, you shift to thinking, you start saying, I am an important part of a grander ecosystem of people and natural processes. Everything I do impacts and matters to someone else, and that in return benefits me. I hike in nature to get to know it better because it's my home. I build settlements that support natural processes. I discover common needs and interests and work to get as many of them met as possible. I am part of nature, and nature is a part of me. And I care for my whole bioregion, which is my home, in which I have a certain dwelling. So that's a distinct shift in mindset. Okay, and then at the end of the presentation, if you all have anything to say or want to, because I can tell that you guys have thoughts and feelings, then we can talk about it. Okay, so now so that to me is an introduction to the principles of bioregionalism. I'm going to shift now towards how we can create an operational system to support a bioregional mindset within a bioregion. So here are core functions of a bioregional organization. The core functions, we have discovery, well-being, culture, and empowerment. Discovery is all about researching the bioregion, exploring what's available, identifying the mapping the sheds, figuring out what all the what people are inventing within the bioregion, what they're doing, collecting ideas, generating ideas, and sharing all that across the bioregion. Because like somebody could do something really cool in their backyard, and maybe everyone else wants to do it, but they wouldn't know because unless there was an active organization trying to just like compare notes and research can be very formal research. It could be academic research, or it could be informal research. It could just be a YouTube channel where people document what they're doing. And a bioregion doesn't necessarily discriminate, but they're just there to just like really pull out like the best of ideas that the bioregion has to offer. Well-being focuses on more active involvement in the community itself. So community building, consensus facilitation, structures for sharing, and regeneration and currency. So well-being really has to do with more long-term planning for how the community wants to get along with one another, and also actively tries to get the community to get to know itself. And by like hosting community-wide conversations, consensus facilitation is about getting people together towards creating consensus, and so that's a process of going from a bunch of different perspectives towards finding common ground, and then figuring out, okay, yeah, we have we have a lot of differences, but what are our similarities, and how can we build from that? Structures for sharing are really cool. Craigslist is a structure for sharing. There's a lot of Facebook groups that are kind of doing this stuff. There's like Hilo, which I really love, from the Terran Collective, is a structure for sharing. If we make it really easy to share with each other, then it's easier to not be such a consumerist culture, for example, right? The reason why a lot of communities like have to only go to Walmart, for example, or feel like they can only go to large corporate entities is because they don't know how to share with each other. And it's not to say that they wouldn't want to, it's just they don't have like convenient structures for sharing. So bioregional organization tries to create structures or promote structures that are already present. Regeneration and currency, that's a big topic. I don't, yeah, like basically from a bioregional perspective, anything that's tradable is a form of currency. So for example, if you are someone that is a master plumber and have years of experience with it, your experience is a form of currency because you can trade with that experience. If you are someone that loves making bead necklaces and you're just really good at it, like that's your form of currency. And so bioregionalism kind of asks you to shift your perspective on what currency is. It's not just the dollar bill. That's also a form of currency, obviously. And then what you end up doing is you end up empowering different ways of trade and different ways of value exchange within bioregion. Okay, so then culture. Culture is another aspect of bioregion. Bioregional organizations want to just empower the culture through like storytelling about like what people are doing for fun in the community. Like for example, Funk Night at G Street, or whatever, all the activities that we have, like we have the farmers market. Communications is obvious, like that's just helping people talk to each other, And archiving is very important. That's basically how we keep track of the accomplishments within the bioregion. And event holding is like how can we like for example, maybe we have a lot of kids between the age of 14 and 18 and they're bored to death because they have nothing to do in the bioregion. So how can we give them things to do and make it like create hikes or like create events that really fit needs that are not presently that met in a bioregion. And eventually over time, if people like it, they want more of it, and that becomes part of the culture. So the bioregion will become known for that festival that they have every year, that whatever, right? And that's great. We want to like support that. And then we have empowerment, the last core function of a bioregional organization. Empowerment is uh, how do you conduct leadership training so that different people in the bioregion have the skills to lead a project, to bring people together, to mobilize each other. Um, how do you have systems of ethics and integrity? So how do you like make sure that things don't get derailed, and like if people get angry or upset at each other, they don't start hurting each other or things like that. And how do you just stay true to the mission, to the word? So that's ethics and integrity. All forms of education are empowerment. So how can schools function better? How can universities, like in the bioregion, participate better? One of the things that I find education is very lacking is the fact that they're very closed off entities. Like you have classrooms, kids go into the classroom, and then the classroom is kind of like this microcosm reality which isn't connected with the community anymore. It's like it's just you're just there to learn. You're just there to read an essay and write a paragraph. It's like why should I read this essay and why should I write this paragraph? Versus if education was more connected to the bioregion, you would go to a festival and you would write a paragraph about the festival, or you would you'd be part of a discovery group and you go out to nature and discover something, right? So you can really involve the whole community within a larger educational process in a bioregion. And then you have alliances and partnerships. There's so many organizations. There are religious organizations, there are nonprofit organizations, there are special interest organizations, there's disability organizations. Like there's so many entities that are already existing within bioregions, and they already do great work. And so part of a bioregional organization is to create maybe an association or greater partnerships to further empower the work that people are already doing. Okay, so that's core function of a bioregional organization. Next. That was a long slide. I didn't realize how long this slide was. All right. Okay, so this is how a bioregional. This is called a bioregional operational cycle. So it's 4 phases. The first phase is visioning. The second phase is planning. The third phase is execution, and the fourth phase is feedback. Basically, you can this whole thing itself. Like I'm trying to create a bioregional organization for this bioregion, for example. So that's a vision right now. We're at the visioning state. I'm sharing ideas. I'm inviting people to brainstorm with me. We're trying to figure out what scope is possible right now. We're like hypothesizing potential things to try, and we're also being really firm with intention. Like, what are we trying to accomplish? Who's it serving? That sort of thing. Eventually, we'll shift to planning, and that is once we have enough great ideas, enough excitement, people will start wanting to say, okay, well, what actually are we going to do? When are we going to do it? Who do we need to be a part of it? And that whole aspect is what I call consensus facilitation. Consensus facilitation basically goes from divergent thinking to a convergent idea. It's like everything converges onto the thing that people want to do, and then you figure out how to do it to the best of your ability. So that's the planning bit. Phase 3 is execution. Once you figure out the timing, then the people they get at it. They try their best to accomplish the plan. Most likely, in once reality starts showing up, you realize you can't really follow the plan, but that's okay. So that's when you shift into being adaptable. You take accountability for things that you couldn't understand or you didn't understand before, or if you make mistakes along the way, so that way you can recover quickly, and that's resilience, is the ability to recover, keep things moving through with a sense of quality, and then just follow through as best as possible to just reach completion. Execution. Phase 4 is feedback. After all is said and done, you kind of look at what happened, and so that's outcome assessment. It's like, okay, if you're trying to build a festival, what the community think? Did it accomplish the purpose of community raising awareness? Did it, like what did the community, would the community want that again? And if so, how would they want it, the same or different? So that's all outcome assessment. And then process optimization is more thinking in terms of, like once you understand the outcome, how can we do it again in a way that's more efficient for us, in a way that's more fun or easier or whatever, or maybe we just really messed up in a certain part of it because we were under resourced, right? So then we just like optimize the process for the second time for another round of doing it. Feedback also involves storytelling. It's about like sharing the journey, the adventure, like documenting the whole process, and then obviously creating a new vision based on the whole process when it comes to completion. And then you just start over again. So we have revisioning, you go back to visioning, you go back to planning, then so these cycles just go on forever, just like life, Yeah. Okay. So then, in order to conduct a operational cycle, you need to have at least 4 types of people. These are I call bioregional team roles. You need a leader, someone that wants to take ownership or responsibility of the whole cycle itself. So the leader organizes the visioning meetings, organizing planning meetings, makes sure that execution is happening on time and adequately, and then also organizes all the assessment, all the outcome, all the process stuff. Now, the way that I conceive of the leader doesn't necessarily have to make the decisions themselves as much as just create the structure, just to hold space. Be like, okay, we're going to have a visioning meeting. And what I'm going to do later on is have specific presentations on what bioregional leadership looks like, just to expand on it more. But then we have support team, so that these are all the people with the people with the video editing skills, the people with the understanding of ecology, or whatever it is, the people that want to contribute their skills, their time to fulfill on the project, and so that they're the ones that actually create the support and create help fulfill the project. Then you have advisors. Advisors typically don't necessarily have a lot of time to deliver results, but they do have a lot of knowledge, and so they'll just drop in and you ask them questions and you say, hey, we want to try to do this, what do you think? And then we take in their advice. Usually these are professors, they're really theoretical anyway, so but it's important to know what they know. And then the last set of people are what I call observers. Observers sometimes don't really know how to best participate in the project, or maybe they don't feel like they have adequate skills. But as an observer, you actually hold a very important place in a bioregional team. So as an observer, you're a witness for archiving and integrity holding. You can offer empathy and emotional support and reflection. So observers basically are there to hold space for the team, to give people to talk to. Maybe people will be upset because something didn't go right, and observers there to just listen to them, be like, hey, you tried your best, If we don't, in my experience, if you don't have people that are what I call observers or empaths in a group, the team burns out really fast. It's just they fizzle out. So you need to definitely have the observers. Great, so basically that's my presentation, and I have some feedback questions. What are your thoughts and feelings about this presentation of bioregionalism? What would you like to learn more about? And what are some possible next steps to move the whole thing forward? I'll leave it up to you guys now. And thanks for listening.
See,
That was a lot. This is a lot. I know it's a lot. It's a lot.
so the presentation itself was probably a little different than I was thinking based on the title.
Okay.
Because the title seemed to me more like how to implement it, which I guess this does fit that, but it's a little bit less concrete than I was expecting. I guess it's more in terms of like the general idea instead of like I really wouldn't use the term implement in terms of doing that because this is more like a general idea of how you would structure the general operation, but it isn't really like how you would actually end up getting it done.
Got it.
Because at least I don't see much in there that really could be like, this is how I'm going to take this idea and make it actually happen.
Got it.
It's at least not in this general, not in a, but not in a very specific sense anyway.
Got it. Got it. Got it.
One other thing is I would revise some of the language that you have in this presentation, especially regarding the settler versus indigenous thing.
Okay.
Because especially the term re-indigenizing doesn't really have anything to do with settlers or indigenous. I would honestly that can come off as kind of offensive, because you're talking about re-indigenizing in terms of how people who live in the area are relating to the environment, but that kind of ignores the fact that there's also this settler colonialism thing. If this is something that pretty much applies to people anywhere, it kind of ignores the fact that there are actually people who are indigenous to that land who aren't able to live there.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, like I bet you if you took this like to like a Native American reserve, that would probably just kind of get laughed off, if anything.
Yeah.
Like, I would revise that language and eliminate that settler versus indigenous thing completely.
Okay. Okay.
Like, to put like rephrase it in terms of actually like having, if you wanted to talk about the environment, have it talk about the environment, but don't. Yeah.
Yeah, like self-based, or people-based, environment-based, or whatever, or some shit like that.
Yeah, I have to really listen to that. There's a lot you're trying to say there. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So aside from that,
you have a lot of thoughts. We can go through if you want.
no, it's. I mean, no, it's.
We had, where was this one? That
Yeah,
one.
yeah. That's specifically what I would change.
Yeah. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that there is a sense of disrespect for indigenous people here. Like
Yes.
yeah, okay. I have to my intention was actually the opposite. I was trying to express that indigenous people already have a bioregional spirit. And it's like, so how can we adopt that?
Well, sure, but it's
know?
basically telling the settlers to re-indigenize by changing their own behavior rather than reintroduce the people who are indigenous.
Yeah.
That's kind of why it comes off as insensitive, I think.
Got it. Okay. So
So I would just not use.
I think that's important.
Language regarding indigenous versus not.
Yeah.
Unless it actually has to do with indigenous people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or unless it's like a specific technical term regarding the indigenous life in the environment.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't use that term because it is a politically charged term and it's easy to disregard or disrespect someone with it, I think.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. Gosh, that's a lot to learn right now. Okay. Next. Anything there? How do you feel, Avery?
I just like am kind of at a loss of like what really the foundation steps are. Like you got a team kind of building, you got all the roles of the team, I think, but it's not like it's just like
See,
um,
see, I actually do have. I'm trying to piece together exactly what my what I want to say about this. I mean, I used to TA, so like I know as far as like the presentation, like one thing I would say regarding this is you want to show rather than tell in terms of how you're presenting the information.
Okay.
So like reading this, like I mean, yeah, I can read the information. Like I can hear what you're saying. I'm still not sure that I have a clear understanding of what a bioregional organization actually looks like.
Yeah.
Like this to me seems more like a general idea, but not really like if I went to go visit a bioregional organization somewhere, like what would it actually implement? What would be the scope of its actual influence? Like what type of operations does it specifically take, or what things are generally beyond the scope of that? I guess.
I love it. That's great. Yeah.
So
Okay. I can. So maybe what I should do is look at models, um, and then just like showcase like the extent to which, like, yeah, just give more examples of things. Yeah.
yeah,
This is so. This is still largely very introductional,
right.
right? So.
No, I get that.
Um. What I'm getting is that it's you guys need a lot more, which is great because I can offer a lot more. I just so more examples. So more sensitivity to indigenous cultures and how they fit into a bioregional framework. That's very important. I mean, these ideas largely come from indigenous wisdom, anyways. So that's important for me not to that like I can't disrespect that in any way. And then more concrete examples for what a bioregional organization does and how we can execute on that. Um, cool. I like that. Great. What else? Anything else?
I guess on a more positive note, I don't want you to feel like I'm just like crapping on your presentation.
No. I mean, that's what the feedback is for. um,
I mean, I mean, in general, I think it shouldn't be too hard to get people on board in terms of like, we have all these resources that are not connected, but that could be. We can do something about that. I think.
yeah.
I mean, I think that's definitely something to like a basic idea to run with, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, what are some possible next steps? I guess for me, possible next steps for me is to just keep. Um, uh, I can add to the presentation. I can make it part two, where I can. So this. So okay, maybe this is. Maybe I should call this just a part. Well, it's an overview, so I guess it's okay as an overview.
Yeah.
I should have an implementation strategy or like um, well, so if we look at this, basically what I've done is just shared a very broad strokes vision.
Mhm.
So maybe I should start thinking more in terms of planning, more in terms of uh, like how we could prepare for executing a bioregional organization. Um, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what this presentation is, I think it's like one step before operation and sort of more conceptualizing what a bioregion is.
Yeah.
When I see the term operation or operational, I think to me, the term operational seems more like it would be around the planning stage.
Yeah. Okay.
That I think that's why I was expecting something else, because, yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay. I mean, I love it. That's great. No, it's great.
Yeah.
Cool.
If you're gonna be the leader, you should find things to tell people what they need to be doing, but what they could be doing to help the bioregional, like find
Okay.
things that could really if you because I feel like you said leader. I mean, whatever. You're the one that's creating this. Um, yeah, like stuff for people to start doing stuff with this.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So some next steps then would be to think of concrete things, the concrete ways that people can start engaging, potentially. And what would you like to okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
totally
just to
fine.
add to that, I don't think it necessarily needs to be like this is what we have to do, but more really more like this is what bioregions have done, or this is what we could be doing if we choose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That is great. That goes back to you were just talking about more concrete, like what is a bioregional organization look like in terms of the actual operations, like with the actual then their scope and whatever. Okay. I love it. That's great. Is there some? Well, okay. I guess that's all things that you would want to learn more about. Is there something in terms of like the theory behind it that you guys would like to learn more about, or do you feel like the theory was pretty well like just let's see was I mean it's a pretty easy concept. It's like a basic. It's like not a hard concept to understand,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
think the concept is pretty simple.
yeah
Which is
yeah. It has a lot of broad sweeping ramifications when you actually practice it, but it's not a hard thing to understand. Yeah. Sweet.
I mean, the basic concept basically comes down to we are part of nature, we exist around each other, we affect each other, we should act like it.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
got it. You got
But
it. Gabe's got it. It's funny. Okay. Well, I guess I can stop recording now. If for Alex and Kathryn, if you guys have any ideas or thoughts to share, um, I would love to hear your thoughts too. So, that was my presentation, my overview on bioregionalism, and I have lots of feedback and a lot more work to do to take it to the next level. So thank you for all of that, and with that, I will sign off.